views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Good evening and welcome to BronxTalk. This past September, Governor Hochul awarded contracts for a major green energy initiative to power New York City with wind, solar, and hydropower that would originate from upstate New York and Canada. The proposal includes new transmission lines that would create approximately 10,000 jobs and bring $8.2 billion in investments, including, they say, to support disadvantaged communities. The plan also says it would reduce the city's reliance on fossil fuels, lower carbon emissions, and significantly improve air quality and public health. The plan as written includes two separate projects. The one we're going to learn about this evening is the Clean Path project. The other is the Champlain-Hudson Power Express. The electricity will then need to be converted from DC to AC current, and we'll talk about where those converter stations will be located. While it all sounds wonderful, in a show we did a couple of months ago, Bronx environmental justice advocates who have seen the borough abused by fossil fuel peaker plants in the South Bronx, a water treatment plant in Van Cortlandt Park in the North Bronx, and of course highways that have bisected the boroughs for generations, have been concerned about how the projects might affect the Bronx, and there's lingering concern that there's a lot not being said about what the implications of this environmental effort will have for the Bronx. Tonight, we hope to have many of those questions addressed and answered by our excellent panel of experts from the three companies and organizations who have teamed up to form the Clean Path project. It's a unique partnership to put this historic investment in energy infrastructure in place. So what is this exciting new investment in clean energy? How will the partnerships work? And also what this new energy plan will mean for the borough of the Bronx. So let's get right to it. And let's get started by welcoming the three guests. The first is the Vice President of energyRe. It is Luke Falk. Mr. Falk, nice to have you with us, sir.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And also the Executive Vice President of Transmission at Invenergy. I'm learning all these new names. It is Shashank Sane. Mr. Sane, nice to have you with us, sir.
Thank you. Very pleased to be here to talk about our project.
The president of the New York Power Authority's development programs, it is Phil Toia. Mr. Toia, nice to have you with us.
Great. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's start with you, Mr. Falk. Clearly, you and your colleagues are excited about this project. Let's get a little background about how it came about and why you think this is such a landmark moment in environmental energy for the Bronx, of course, but for the city and the state of New York.
Yeah, thank you again. So excited to be here. So the Clean Path New York project is a nation-leading clean energy infrastructure program that is focused on remediating environmental justice issues at its core. Our project takes a huge amount of development of wind and solar resources developed outside of the city in upstate New York, 3,800 megawatts of new wind and solar, and delivers that clean power into Queens via a 175-mile underground HVDC transmission line. When you create that much energy and you bring it into the city, you have hugely beneficial consequences on the city's electric system. All of that green power goes to displacing dirty fossil fuel-fired power plants that currently operate in the 5 boroughs. It reduces statewide fossil fuel emissions by 22% every year. a huge amount of the emissions that are avoided by virtue of our project are happening in frontline communities throughout the city and across the state. And so we believe that this project will deliver huge environmental justice benefits to all communities across the city.
Are you concerned about the ability to generate enough electricity to have the kind of effect that you want to have? And then, of course, you don't want to say, hey, we're going to create all this energy and have it not be sufficient to power what it takes to power the city of New York and the borough of the Bronx.
Yeah, so our project is just one component of a larger initiative undertaken by the state to decarbonize the city's electricity system. And so our strategy is to develop 3,800 megawatts of new wind and solar. I should make the point that all of that is located within the state of New York. The reason why we build so much of it is because we want to do as much as we can to positively impact the emissions profile of the city's grid. The transmission line that we're building is 1,300 megawatts. So it's smaller than the amount of generation that we're building. And the reason why we do that is because the sun only shines when it shines and the wind only blows when it blows. So we overbuild the renewables to ensure that the line is always as full as it can be.
We're going to talk in a little bit with Mr. Toia about the Power Authority's storage facility, which we're going to talk. We'll get to him in a moment. The final question for you for this moment is: what is energyRe's part of it? In other words, you are representing your company, and this is a partnership which we're going to unravel as the program goes on. But what is your part of it? Like, what do you add that, let's say, the other two, the Power Authority and Invenergy, doesn't contribute?
Yeah, so energyRe is a clean energy development firm. We have capabilities around complex infrastructure development, regulatory affairs, engineering and architecture, and all of the work that goes into enabling large-scale projects like this. We have a special focus on financial wherewithal and structuring complex transactions. So along with Invenergy, who is a nation-leading company in the development of clean energy, and NYPA, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, municipal state utility in the country, which owns and operates a third of the state's bulk power system. Together, we are collectively advancing this project in a way that I think benefits everybody.
Then let's turn in a moment. We're going to turn to Mr. Sane, and I want to just review Invenergy's contribution. I just wanted to point out something that we received from the New York Power Authority, which is very interesting. And I think in terms of kind of convincing people or explaining to people why this is so important, it just was a series of numbers. 7.5 million megawatt hours of emissions-free energy to New York City every year. 1,800 megawatts of new solar power generated in upstate and western New York, as opposed to having them generated in our communities. 2,000 megawatts of new onshore wind power generated in upstate and western New York. I had mentioned, they said up to 10,000 new jobs. The number we got from the Power Authority was 8,300 new jobs created in New York State. 39 million tons of CO2 emissions eliminated statewide, 22% reduction in fossil fuels in New York State on the average each year. To me, those are impressive numbers, and something I think that certainly from a planning point of view sounds pretty good. Of course, we'll find out if we're going to be able to achieve those goals, but that's what the intention is. So, Mr. Sane, let's talk about Invenergy and what your company is going to be doing for this project.
Sure. Thanks again for having us. So, Invenergy is one of the leading, if not the leading, renewable energy developer in the country. We're privately held in based in Chicago, so not necessarily quite the brand name that maybe others are familiar with, but in our history now, closing in or just completing our 20th year in activity, we've developed over 29,000 megawatts of power generation projects and transmission projects across the globe, mainly focused here in the U.S. and with a long history actually in New York State. We've been active in New York State for over 15 years. We put our first facility into service in the late 2000s. That was 2008, our first wind facility. And since then, we've built several hundred additional megawatts of wind and solar facilities. We're commissioning our first battery storage facility in the state and have many hundreds, if not thousands, more megawatts of activity to be built in the next coming years. And really, this Clean Path project is sort of the culmination of all of our activity in New York State for the past many years. It brings together our experience in developing wind, in developing solar, and transmission, all capabilities that we've shown across the globe. And we're very excited to bring all of that to bear in New York State to further the goals.
In order to get energy from upstate into anywhere in the city, presumably transmission lines need to go through the borough of the Bronx. You might be aware that there's great concern about those transmission lines in the Bronx. Where are they going to be? Are they going to be underground? Do we, put a pipeline underneath the Harlem River? Maybe. I'm just speculating out loud. And of course, for very good reasons, I articulated some of them at the beginning. People of the Bronx are concerned. You're bringing energy in. Guess who's going to get the lowest end of the stick? Talk to me about where the transmission lines are going to be, and maybe you can allay some fears about how this is going to be produced.
Sure. So the general parameters of the transmission line have been identified. As Luke mentioned earlier, it's running 175 miles from the central part of New York State near Delhi down into New York City, terminating in Queens. The intent is to use existing NYPA right-of-way for the first 105 miles of.
What does that mean, right-of-way?
Sorry, apologies. Yeah. So
that's okay.
NYPA has an existing overhead 345 kilovolt transmission line running for pretty much the first 105 miles of the route. We'll be using that existing corridor to bury the new transmission line underground in that same space. So minimizing the amount of new disturbance to the environment by using that existing corridor where a transmission line has already been built. From there, our goal is to use public streets and the Hudson River to ultimately get down into New York City. Now, the more detailed routing, we are still going through the alternatives analysis about which streets and exactly.
When you say streets, are we talking about digging up a street and digging a trench and putting lines down there, or it's already using current infrastructure like you would be doing upstate through the city? And again, that's where the question for Bronxites and Bronx environmental advocates are like, when it comes down to it, they're going to dig up our streets. The Grand Concourse all of a sudden is going to have a construction project, and it's a nightmare for everybody.
Sure.
I mean, that's what it's out there. That's what people are thinking.
Understand. So the exact, which streets we're going to be in and which methods are going to be used to traverse those streets, that's still under the alternatives evaluation. There's a very robust process in New York State called Article 7, which needs to approve the route and the construction method for any new transmission line. So we're embarking on our process to get that Article 7 approval. The Article 7 process is a well-established, very public process through which we'll be engaging with communities, certainly with the Bronx, about the route we intend to use and how we intend to construct the transmission line to ensure that we're receiving and incorporating that community feedback. And ultimately, the first step that we had with NYSERDA in getting this award was just that, a first step. There's still quite a lot of public engagement to happen before this line becomes operational or even begins construction. That becomes a very big issue for the people of the Bronx, because they always feel like somebody else is making the decisions, and we end up paying the piper, so to speak. Mr. Toia, let's talk about NYPA's role in this. I was very interested to discover about this
if I get the name right, the Blenheim Gilboa storage plant, which is way upstate. Talk to me about that. There's a look at it, and what what do you expect that project that facility to add to this project?
Sure. Yeah, it's the Blenheim Gilboa facility. You got the name correct. It's located in Schoharie County. It's what is called a pump storage hydroelectric plant. So there's a lower reservoir and an upper reservoir. The turbines can operate either as a turbine spinning a generator, or they can operate in the reverse direction, and the generator can pump through the turbines to the upper reservoir. So it's an energy storage facility. It's been in existence, I believe commercial operation was 1973. It's typically used to, you typically pump water at nights and weekends when there's excess energy in the system or lower prices. And then during peak periods or system conditions where you need that energy, then you generate. And the use of the facility here, as Luke pointed out early on in the conversation, the renewables, the wind and solar that is being built exceed the capacity of the line. So the process here will be when there's excess energy being generated from the renewables that you can't push down the line into New York City, we would look at opportunities to store that energy at the Blenheim Gilboa or BG facility. And then when there's periods where the sun isn't shining or the wind isn't blowing or demand is such that you need that extra capacity, then we would use that water that's stored in the upper reservoir to generate and send that electricity down the line into the city.
I guess this, what you just told us, underscores the nature or the beauty of this partnership, so that kind of everybody is putting in their own thing, so to speak. And NYPA's role in this is to provide the storage so that the renewables are more effective and able to be used. Do I have that right?
Yeah, correct. And I think that 2 points I want to, it relates to the transmission line, but also Blenheim Gilboa. We're utilizing existing resources, as Shashank said, about utilizing the 105 miles of NYPA existing right away and utilizing Blenheim Gilboa. We're getting more out of existing resources and infrastructure to work hand in hand with the new development of the transmission line and the renewable resources to really optimize and maximize the benefits to the system.
One of the things that is boasted about in those numbers that I showed is the delivery of clean energy. 39 million tons of CO2 emissions eliminated statewide. There you can get a look at how badly set up we are. The zero emission energy upstate is doing fine. Of course, in New York City and downstate, it's a heck of a lot less, and that's what we want to address. Let's talk about the peaker plants in the South Bronx. There's a lot. It's clear to many. It's been studied plenty that these are polluting projects that people of the Bronx have, they believe that Pataki said that this was going to be a temporary fix. Can this energy being generated, this new cleaner energy, finally put in place so that the peaker plants could simply be eliminated and taken down? I mean, are we at that point? Because that would be music to the ears of Bronxites. That's for you, Mr. Toia.
Okay, so I'll take the, I'll leave it to Luke or Shashank to address some of this as well. But NYPA is working in collaboration with local Bronx interest groups and New York City-based environmental groups to do an assessment to look at transitioning our peaker fleet to low to zero carbon resources by 2035. So those transition plans are currently, the studies are being conducted, and that's in development, and that the results of those studies will be shared publicly when we get to that point. So that's first and foremost on that. As far as the displacement of other fossil resources, I think you touched upon the statistics, the numbers earlier. And I think, that's really up to I'll say, what other market participants do to those resources. But I think Luke has some more details on
Sure,
that.
we'll go around the room with it. I will say 2035 is nice to hear, but of course it's 15 years away, and that's 15 years of affecting Bronx lungs, and that's not going to make anybody around here very happy. But so, Mr. Falk, did you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I mean, I think the way we look at it from a project perspective is the more clean energy we can bring into the city, there's a direct supplanting of the use of fossil fuel fired resources that are the point sources of, harmful emissions, criteria air pollutants like NOx, SOx, and particulates, which are really sort of the bad actors that cause a lot of the horrible public health outcomes like Asthma Alley and others. So our agenda, our mission is to be able to bring as much clean energy online as we can, knowing that the more we bring, the less runtime all of the fossil fuel resources operating in the city will have. Now, when you talk about decommissioning, that's a whole process that those independent power producers have to undertake. It's highly regulated and dependent upon the system operator of the grid, whose main role in life is to ensure that the power never shuts off. So decommissioning units is generally very hard. What we want to do is everything we can do to make sure that regardless of how the decommissioning effort unfolds, they never have to run.
Okay, that is a hopeful statement, and I think people of the Bronx would appreciate it. Mr. Sane, did you want to weigh in on that? If not, I have a follow-up about something else I want to ask you about.
Just one final note on that. The primary purpose of the Clean Path project is to bring the renewable energy into New York City. However, the mere existence of the transmission line creates a much more robust electric grid for New York City, where it has more flexibility to bring power during all times from upstate New York, whether that's renewable or other zero carbon sources, to meet the energy needs. As Luke was talking about, ultimately this comes down to meeting the energy needs of the city. And as the city gets more options for meeting those needs through transmission or otherwise, it has the ability to be able to shut down some of those in-city generators without risk of keeping the lights on. And so the transmission line is really an important element in that security of the electric supply.
So what you have just done is gotten the people of the Bronx to root like heck for you to do really, really well, really, really fast. And then maybe we can get somewhere. And certainly the role of this program would be to get the three of you to sit around the table once and say, it's kind of an issue down there. That'd be a good thing. We try to advocate for the BX whenever and wherever we can. I do want to ask you, Mr. Sane, about the map that we showed earlier shows converter stations. Originally, in some of the documents released, and this raised eyebrows in the Bronx, they talked about building a converter station in Van Cortlandt Park. And I noticed that I'm going to get the name wrong, the Blenheim Gilboa plant is, of course, right by the water near a beautiful bucolic area. Where will these converter stations be? Are they going to be far away from the Bronx? And are you concerned that, as with the water filtration plant, it was like, well, here's available land, let's build it in Van Cortlandt Park. Is there some concern that this is going to have to take up bucolic public land that is so precious in the city and in the borough of the Bronx?
Right. So, we certainly heard the feedback of the community and responded.
Good.
Our plan now is to be siting the converter station at an industrial facility in Queens. As we noted earlier, we think that really is a great spot to locate a piece of infrastructure like this. I think it's certainly far away from any residential communities and is well situated for a piece of energy infrastructure, such as a converter station, which, as we know, is not an emitting resource, but still, we certainly are cognizant of wanting to locate it in industrial areas.
Okay, well, that certainly makes sense. We're almost out of time. Mr. Toia, did you want to add something? Sure, go ahead.
One thing that I wanted to just jump in with to clarify is that our project actually wasn't ever intending to site a facility in Van Cortlandt Park. I think that was just a different project that tried to apply for the same RFP.
Fair enough. That's certainly, it could be the Chippy project. I've studied yours much more carefully in advance of you coming here than that one. I just want to talk about some of the benefits, and people in the Bronx hear that, and sometimes the benefits end up drying up. Sometimes they're not sufficient. So, Mr. Toia, talk to me about the apportioning. We're almost out of time. You get about a minute or so to do it. The apportioning of some of the benefits. Who gets it? Who doesn't get it? And how is it selected to be distributed?
Actually, I would prefer to defer to Mr. FALK on this. NYPA's role is not involved in this portion.
All right, fair enough.
Yes. So as part of our project, we've committed to establishing a $270 million community investment fund focused on 4 broad pillars of engagement. So first, a big focus on workforce development, creating pathways and linkages from members of frontline communities to opportunities to work on our project and projects like our project, which are going to characterize the future clean energy economy. A focus on education to enable the next generation of workers to really understand all things climate justice and associated with the clean energy future. Another focus on expanding access to healthcare in frontline communities who have for too long borne the burden of the fossil fuel economy. And finally, an initiative around environmental stewardship. And in the city, that may look like rehabilitating parks, enhancing community spaces. It could be retrofitting affordable housing for electrification to reduce emissions even further from the boilers that run on oil and gas that are scattered all throughout the city. So we think that this fund is going to be managed by a board of directors that's comprised of project participants like us and community stakeholders.
I'm waiting for the community stakeholder part of it.
Right.
That's what we advocate for.
So here we go.
So anyway, we're just about out of time. Mr. Toia, you want to just briefly give us 20 seconds on why NYPA is so excited about this project?
Right. NYPA's been around for 90 years. For those that are not aware of that, 70% of our generation is renewable hydroelectric power. And we, as Luke indicated earlier, we own about 1/3 of the bulk power system in New York State. So this is just really a great addition to, our existing infrastructure in working with this. I think this is a great example of a public-private partnership.
Got it. We got to get going.
Yep, gotcha.
I really appreciate that. We're moving from the 90-year-old systems to modern systems. I like that idea. And Mr. Sane, you can get about 20 seconds for your final words, if you would.
Yeah, thank you again for having us. We at Invenergy are extremely excited to be a part of this. This is truly a transformational project for the electric grid in New York State, but more importantly, for the health and the air in New York City. It's going to be a tremendous improvement to the air quality and reduction in particulate matter, and will really drive amazing health outcomes. Great.
Gentlemen, we got to run. Thank you so much for Invenergy, for energyRe, and for the New York Power Authority for bringing you onto the program. And you know what's going to happen? We'll see you next week. Good night.